Right, hello. Hello. So, who here does web development? I hope that's all of you. Put your hands up. Yeah? Brilliant. Who here thinks they work on a brilliant team? Who thinks that as brilliant as their team is, it could be better? Ah, cool. You can all go then. No, the rest of you can go. You can stay. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit of the stuff that I did whilst I was at the BBC. Because, frankly, as brilliant as any team is, even though you lot don't seem to think it, you can all be better. And frankly, the team that I was working in at the BBC was pretty much the same. When I joined, it could be better. And yeah, there are things that you can do to improve that. I mean, little things, big things, there are always things that you can do. And over the next some minutes, I'm going to show you a few of the things that I did whilst I was at the BBC. That's me. So my name's Neil Crosby. I'm not Jonathan Snook, and I'm not Gordon Freeman. I'm a developer. I like Lego. Lego's good. And I bake cakes. They're good as well. I don't have any today. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I also like dark rum and Diet Coke. So this is the slide that says if someone wants to get me a drink ready by the time I've finished, that'd be brilliant and I'll love you forever. Please. So for the last month or so, I've been working at LOVEFiLM. I'm now a technical project manager. That's pretty much what my day-to-day life in the job is. I lay around in rose petals. I am a project manager now. But that doesn't mean that I'm evil. I used to be a developer. I'm one of you people, I really am. I'm nice, I want to make life nice for the developers. Not fooling anyone. It's true! Who said that?
You joined the dark side.
So until about a month ago, I worked at the BBC. I was the lead developer on the homepage. I've been there for about 2 years. When I joined, the team was looking to put the current version of the page that you can get to when you go to www.bbc.co.uk live. That went live, and then everything blew up a bit. And then for the last year and a half, I've been working on the current version that's on beta.bbc. And that went live, and that's still working okay at the moment, which is good. But what I'm going to talk to you a bit today about is some of the terror that we had at the castle when I first joined. Oh, things weren't good. They weren't. Over the course of the homepage that's currently live being developed, developers had come and gone. It was a big move from a Perl-based system over to a PHP one. The architecture that had been there at the start had fallen over a bit. Loads of people had left, loads of people had joined. We'd got contractors there who kind of wanted to hold everything into themselves and not share anything with anyone else. We had people who didn't really know what was going on, and things weren't great. When we went live, immediately everything fell over. Turned out that we were storing a hell of a lot more data in places than we should have been. We had to rip a whole bunch of the architecture out of the side. Bugs came in, came back again, and back again, and back again, and back again. We had a hell of a lot of problems with location and all sorts of things like that that just kept on coming back and hitting us on the arse. And there were reasons for this. Reasons like developers hiding things into themselves. We had huge areas of the code that one person had seen. Throughout the entire development process, straight the way through into live, one person had seen. When that stuff fell over, oh boy, that wasn't fun when that person had left. We had hideously different styles across the entire code base. Anyone trying to come in and look at any of the code had about a 6 to 8 week ramp-up period before they could actually get on with any work. That wasn't fun. Essentially, things weren't great. It wasn't nice at all. So when we came to start working on the new version of the page, we wanted better than that. We wanted a Wookiee to give us hugs. I mean, who wouldn't? Well, probably a lot of people, but Wookiee hugs are good. So yeah, we wanted to start again from scratch with nice code, doing things the right way, so that people could join the team, they'd be able to get up to speed fairly quickly, they'd be able to do stuff, that we'd know that things worked, that when things didn't work, we could fix them quickly and then get on with it. We just wanted a nice code base. And that's really what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. A few of the things that we did on our team to make our life better. These are things which you can try and do them yourself. You can do similar things. I'm not trying to say you do all of them. Just do the stuff that makes sense for you. So here's the little list of things that we did. We started doing continuous peer review. That's code review all the time. That's good. We had standards. Standards are good, right? Yeah? Yeah. We had tests, because tests are good. We like to know when things go wrong. And we did some other stuff as well. And really, this isn't rocket science. It's easy stuff. It's obvious stuff. But none of the teams that I've been in have really done this very well. And we decided that we wanted to do this properly. And we wanted this stuff to work. So we did. And it worked. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is continuous peer review. I call this dev checks. I wrote a post about it back at the beginning of the year. And it's something that I could go on about for quite a long time. I'm going to try not to today. I'm going to try and go through it fairly quickly. A dev check is not a replacement for a normal code review. Normal code reviews that happen every while when you've done a big load of code and go over it and talk about it and find good stuff and find bad stuff, that's really good. I'm not saying to replace that, although most of the places where I've been that say that they do it don't actually do it, and that's one of the reasons we did put this in place. A dev check is a process that happens after every small piece of work, every story of work that's been done, before it gets tested by our testers, to look at the code, to find good stuff, find bad stuff, and make sure it's of reasonable quality to be able to go live. Essentially, what happens is that before any task is moved into test, a developer who didn't work on it must say that they're happy with how it's being completed. Every task, no matter how big, how small, everything gets done. And this has worked out really well for us. Essentially, the process is that after every task, go off and find someone else. You say, hello, Jake. Jake will do. Sorry, I was trying to remember a name that wasn't Norm's. Hello, Jake. I've written some code. Would you like to come and have a look at it? No. Jake then says yes, because Jake's a good person. Jake then comes and looks at my code and asks me some questions. Now, those questions can be different depending on what the work is. If the person you're talking to is a stormtrooper who looks a little short and you're worried that there's a princess that might be being tried to be broken out of a jail cell, you might ask whether he's a little short. If you've written some code, you might ask whether it adheres to the standards that you've set out in the team, whether it passes all your tests, whether it does what it's meant to do, whether it works across all the browsers that you're meant to be working in. You ask these questions, you share the code, you find out what the person's done, and if it's not good enough, you tell them it's not good enough. And there's one question that you always ask, no matter what the task is. You always ask the person, does anything worry you? I mean, not in life in general, of course, because Thulu, probably a little bit worrying. But you ask if there's anything that worries them about the code that they've written. Because, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm quite lazy. Sometimes I write some code, it does the job, does what I want it to do, but it's not necessarily great. And maybe Jake, when he looked at the code, he didn't notice the stuff that I didn't really like. But by him asking me whether there was anything that worried me, I'll say, yeah, actually, that little area over there where there's a rock over there that's not really meant to... Yeah, I didn't really like that. And then Jake and I would have a conversation, and we'd have a little bit of a chat about whether that rock actually made sense to be there or whether it didn't. And 9 times out of 10, it probably did make sense to be there, but it just helps to have another person actually say, you know what, actually, yeah, it's all right. Or, actually, it shouldn't be there. Throw it back into the lake, go off and do that, and life's good. Without asking that question, that would have gone over into the live servers. So that might have gone and knocked something over. Something might have gone wrong. And then 2, 3, 4 weeks later down the line, when you find out that something's gone wrong, you've got to go back into your code, work out exactly what it was that was causing the problem, and fix it. That's more expensive than just doing it immediately. So we have the dev check to go and find those bits and pieces. And yeah, like I say, if stuff isn't good enough, it goes back into development. One of the nice things in our team was that we said, as part of our process for the dev check, that whoever dev checks the work, whether you're a senior, they're a junior, whoever it is, if they say the work isn't good enough, it can go back into development. Doesn't matter who it is. Everyone has skills. Everyone, you've hired the person because they're good enough to be able to do the job. You should trust them. If they say the work isn't good enough and it needs something to be done, you go back and bloody well do it. It'll save time. It'll make your life a hell of a lot easier when you don't go and find that problem later on. Fix it there and then. What we found is that the dev check process pretty much takes about 10% of the time of the work that you actually did in the first place. So if you changed a link, I know, simple example, if you changed a link and you got someone to look at it and check whether that was okay, that would take like a second. But we've actually found that stopped us from having problems before, because we've gone and put broken links up onto the live site before, and that's not great, and you don't want to do that. So we do this for everything. If it was a big task that had taken 3 weeks to do it, you'd probably have to think, why did we take 3 weeks to do that in the first place, and it wasn't chucked up into smaller chunks, but it'll take a bit longer to go and do that because you need to go through everything that's happened in the code. And yeah, we do this because sometimes people do things wrong. We're all human, we're not robots. I do things wrong, I get code wrong all the time. And it's helpful to get someone to have a look at it and say, yeah, you did that wrong. You do not want to be a Dark Lord of the Sith riding around on an ostrich. That's bad. That makes you look like a fool when that gets into the live servers. One of your customers sees that and says, you didn't mean to do that, did you? It's cheaper and easier to be able to go and fix that immediately rather than waiting several weeks to do it. The other reason we do this is because people die. Sometimes one of your team members will fall into radioactive sludge, they'll die, you'll have to look after their code. By doing the dev checks, everyone in the team has more of an idea about what's going on in the code base. You remember back at the beginning of the talk, I talked about the people on the original team who kind of hoarded knowledge to themselves and never shared it at all. That's not good. Dev checks share the knowledge, people know what's going on. You don't get stuck with a horrendous piece of code that you always have to go and look after to the end of time. And the team gets better. It's nice. I mean, ultimately, peer review helps the team. Talking about the code that you've done is good. As much as we like to do big code reviews every now and then, they're great. Doing this all the time really helps to share knowledge all the time and gets rid of bugs. We found that after we started doing this process, our bug rate plummeted. We had a hell of a lot more time to write code and not go through and fix bugs, and that's nice. Who here wants to be fixing bugs rather than writing real code? Put your hand down. Okay, you can keep it up. So yeah, that's the continuous peer review. Dev checks, whatever you want to call them, we did them. It really helped us. They were really good. If you don't do anything else that happens that I talk about in this talk, it's a good thing to try. Try it out. Talk to your colleagues and share knowledge. It's good. The next thing I'm going to talk about very quickly is having standards. Standards are good, right? Yeah? Knowing that within your team, you have a way that your team does stuff, and that's good, right? Yeah? Yes. The problem is, yeah? Yeah, absolutely, we have so many of them. But we also don't have any of them sometimes as well. Within our team at the BBC, the code that we'd written before we started working on the new project wasn't great. There were millions of different styles all over it. Trying to look at the code and getting your head around what was going on wasn't fun. So one of the things that we did when we started up the new page, oh, that's better, was to put in place some standards. Now, back at Yahoo, where I was before, we tried to put in place some lovely, lovely code standards. And they were nice, and it was good to do, but it took months and months and months and months and months and months and months of people arguing about whether tabs or spaces were good, about whether curly braces should be on the same line as a function or the next one, all these sort of things. It was lots of fun. And going into this, we knew we wanted to have a standard that the team was going to follow and actually follow it, but we knew that we didn't want that to happen. So we had the conversation, we did that. We started off with a known standard, actually Zend in this case, but it doesn't really matter what. And then when we got to people complaining and saying, oh, I like tabs, oh, but I like spaces, but I like tabs, well, I like spaces. one of us put our foot down, me in this case, and said, right, we're having spaces, and just stamped it on the head. So we now have standards on the home page for PHP, JavaScript, CSS, whatever, which are picked up by PHP Code Sniffer, which is a lovely little tool which does various different languages, including, obviously, PHP, which looks at your code, looks at a standard that you give it, says whether or not you've adhered to that standard. And standard in this case doesn't just necessarily mean the shape of the code. It can also go and find various bad smells of your code. So if you've got some security stuff, for example, that you don't want to end up in your code ever, you can write a sniff for that. If that ever appears in your code, it can say, hey, no, you don't want to do that, and tell you off. So we plugged in the standards to our page. And that's great, but just having standards and being able to run that against your code doesn't necessarily mean you actually will. And we've found in various projects in the past that whilst you have standards, you don't necessarily follow them. There's nothing to actually make you follow them, nothing to make you actually stick to them. So we plugged this into our build system. And then if anything broke the standard, for any reason, for any of the things that we did, the build broke. And it was the developer who broke its responsibility to go back, fix it, make it good. This also tied up into our dev checks for us. So as part of the dev check process, one of the things you'd ask is, do the standards get adhered to? If the person could run the script on their sandbox, everything was how we said it. That was a good starting point for the dev check to continue, for the rest of the questions to occur. And knew that you weren't going to fall over on that point as soon as you went up onto the test servers. Like I said, this isn't just about the shape of the code, this is about smells as well. And this is something that, whilst it doesn't necessarily seem like the most important thing to do, it made us have a code base that we knew that we could go to anything at all in our code, know that it was going to work in a certain way, and was going to be easily viewable, easily digested by any of us. It meant that we could just pick up anything we want, and it was all good. So we liked doing that. That was good. Now the next thing we did was write some tests, because tests are good, right? Yeah? Yeah, thank you. Who writes tests? Who really writes tests? Good, you're good people. We wrote tests as well. We didn't used to. We started writing them, and again, these got plugged into our build system. We wrote unit tests for our PHP, yay. We wrote unit tests for our JavaScript that was frameworkish and had clear inputs and outputs. None of your DOM stuff. Just nice little JavaScript functions that have clear inputs and outputs. That was good. That was again part of our dev check process, that we checked that those had been written, that they made sense, that they did what they were expected to do. Unit tests are good. They make sure that all your little bricks all fit together. They're good. We wrote functional tests. Isn't that cute? I love that picture. I just think that's really cute. So I say we wrote functional tests. The developers didn't. These were written mostly by the testers. They wrote Selenium tests and made sure that the functionality of the site worked properly. Again, these fitted in with every single story that we did. We made sure that functional tests were written so that when we went up through the systems, that everything worked. These ran every hour or so, and again, if the tests failed, whoever had written the commit that caused the test to fail had to go back and go and fix their code to make sure that things worked in the way that they're expected to. We didn't like things breaking. But sometimes they do. Isn't that sad? It's melted Lego. Sometimes things do break. And the other type of test that we wrote, which is pretty much unit tests and functional tests again, but anytime anything broke, we went back and wrote some new tests for it. That was really important and helped save our bacon on quite a few times, because we had various times when we broke stuff and then didn't go and write this and then fixed something else, and then the same thing broke again. So we made sure that we started writing our regression tests, because really they've saved our bacon lots. And again, just like with the standards, if our tests broke, our build broke, and the developer had to go back and immediately fix it and make C3PO work again. We don't like broken C3. And yeah, back at the beginning of this section, I said about worthwhile tests, didn't I? What's worthwhile? Pretty much we tested specific features within our code. In an ideal world, we'd have had ridiculous amounts of time. We'd have been able to test absolutely everything that we ever wrote, and that would be brilliant. But we didn't, so there had to be some pragmatism. So we generally tested the happy path through our code, with a few exceptions, a few bad cases in there. Within our tests, we strove for high code coverage, but 100% of touching of all the lines of the code doesn't necessarily mean that we've actually tested everything that the code base did. So we had to use our brains a bit and make sure that things did what we actually expected to, and we weren't just mindlessly hitting every single line of code. That's good. And like Sherlock Holmes says, sometimes you've got to go and get rid of some tests because you can't go and throw absolutely everything into your brain, because when you add more knowledge to your brain, you'll forget something you had there before. So we also made sure that we deleted tests when they were no longer necessary or valid. And those are the three things that we really did that really, really made our life more pleasant. We started looking at our code all the time and making sure that it was good. That reduced our bugs massively and made our life happier. We had standards, so we knew that we could go and look at the code that we'd written, come back to it, and it would work in the way that we all understood. And we wrote tests so that we knew it was good. So that was great. We also did some other stuff as well. This is fairly nice, easy stuff, so I'm going to skip over this quite quickly. We did pair programming where appropriate. Sometimes things are big, sometimes they need an extra pair of brains whilst you're doing them. Pair programming, good. Please do it. It is good. Sometimes for the right thing, where appropriate. Don't do everything pair programming, that's stupid. Do it where it's appropriate, but it is useful. We enhanced progressively. One of the things that I was ridiculously keen on, and I could talk about this for a long time, so I'm not going to. One of the things I was really keen on with the homepage was that it would work for everybody. That's good, right? Working for everybody, yeah. So we actually started off with the homepage for the first few weeks of working on it with the idea that JavaScript did not exist at all, that everything just had to work because that's good. We then layered on JavaScript on top, making the things that already worked work even nicer. During that, we had a word, a phrase that we like to use for that. We called it the core view. We did not talk about with JavaScript being off. We didn't talk about without JavaScript or anything negative like that. We talked about starting with the core view of the stuff that the business actually wanted to do, making sure that the designers understood that we were talking about the core and then adding on to it, rather than starting with the sparkly and removing off it. And explaining that to the designers and stopping saying the J word really made a massive difference. And we ended up with designs and infrastructure that worked really nicely. And try stop talking, don't mention the J word, talk about the core view, talk about making things shiny on top of stuff that already works for everything. Because JavaScript isn't always available immediately. Sometimes you come to a page and you click on something before all the JavaScript libraries and everything else have loaded in, and you kind of want your page still to work at that point. Sometimes you get people going and doing funnels for sign-ups on your site that go and break the JavaScript for the entire page, and you know if people are fiddling around with that and going and breaking your site, you kind of want the rest of the page to go and work as well. So we start with nothing and layer it on top, and that worked well for us. Also within our team, we very, very much didn't work out of hours. People were there for the time that they were there, and then they buggered off home. Because we don't want people burning out, that'd be bad. We like people to come into the office, do their work hard, go home, and that was good. Of course, sometimes things really explode, and then sometimes you have to go and put a little bit of extra time in. But that was the exception rather than the norm, and we liked people to go home. Another thing we did, which made life happier, was bringing in baked goods. Cakes are good. Bring some cake in for your team tomorrow. They'll enjoy it. It's good. Cake is good. Yeah? Cake's good. Yeah, cake is good. Rich, cake is good. And if you don't like cake, go and have some drink. This is something which, as stupid as it seems, really made life better on our team. Going out and socialising outside of the office, whether it's lunch and just having lunch together, whether it's going for a couple of drinks after work occasionally. It's just nice to be able to moan about some of the things that are happening in the office when you're not there. So yeah, go have drinks. Drinks are good. And yeah, at the end of all that, we went from an environment which really wasn't nice that everyone was tearing their hair out with, that nobody liked at all, to something that, yeah, pretty much worked. The code was better, the bugs were down, we were on a horse, and life was good. Thank you. Oh, and one more thing. LOVEFiLM's hiring. If you think that any of that sounded good things to do, come and talk to me, because I'd like to hire you. We're trying to build up a new team, and yay! Thank you. Now, does anyone have any questions? I'll go for the chap who's sitting behind Norm.
So it seems like you put a lot of process and time and effort into fixing problems with bad people. Why didn't you just fire the bad people?
Yeah, we did get rid of the bad people. But the bad people aren't the only thing. Yeah. The bad people were really not the only bad thing there. We knew that there were things that were going wrong that weren't just about the people. And we wanted to just make sure that we were going to go in the right direction. Another thing I didn't mention there was that we also knew, come the start of the current homepage project, that the team was going to be moved up to Salford by the end of it. We wanted to make sure that the code base that we were going to ship up there was going to be of high quality, and they weren't going to want to turn around and say, huh, the hell is this? And then throw it away again. We wanted to make sure that everything that we were doing was of the right quality for that.
Were the slides from your own personal collection of Lego?
Some of them were. The others came from Flickr. They were all Creative Commons image. You've all got the links to them all down there. If you want to go back to the original pages, you can. These slides are going to be up on SlideShare by tomorrow morning.
Neil, it's diet coke, right?
Yes, please.
You said you started out the homepage with the core process, so progressive enhancements, so the idea of no JavaScript, but what about browsers?
Sorry, what about?
Browsers.
So,
with the lowest grade and work up?
So we started off with semantic HTML that was going to work properly for everything, with the best will in the world was going to work for everything. That was where we started with there. We do, of course, have a level of browsers that we had to support, which we obviously tested against. But for us, we wanted to make sure that the starting point of the HTML, the CSS, was of a standards-based quality. Monica?
How did you convince the people who give you money that it will eventually work?
So the question there was, how did we convince the people with the money that it would eventually work? Big sticks. No, seriously, the way that we convinced them was talking about the reduction in the amount of bugs that we were going to find there, that we were building on increased quality, that we weren't going to have the hideous amount of time spent on bugs that we were currently having on the current system. Things weren't great in that respect at all, and it was, for us, for our team, a fairly easy sell. For the dev check process, my blog post does go into a whole bunch of other stuff there, but I can't actually remember what I said in there. I just know that I said it. I'll go for you in the corner. Yeah, you'll do.
I like your kind of continuous code review idea, but how do you enforce it, or not enforce it? How do you kind of get them on board and kind of come to some stuff?
Cool. The question was, continuous review is brilliant, but how do you convince people to do it? How we convinced people to do it was by, first of all, realizing that the quality of of what we had at the beginning was bad. That was an easy sell for us. But also, the other way that we dealt with it was just to have a chat and just to talk to the developers about the fact that their code was going to be better for it. It wasn't about finding problems. It was about sharing good stuff across the team and making sure that nobody who was on the team was going to end up getting stuck on something horrendous forever. We'd seen various people on the team ending up getting stuck on horrendous pieces of code previously, and nobody wanted that to happen. PJ?
Why, you said you paired on some stuff, why didn't you pair on everything?
Question was, why didn't we pair on everything? Because some things were just too small and didn't make sense to pair on for everything. The things that we paired on were the larger items that weren't necessarily as carefully spec'd out as they could have been. They had enough information to be able to work on, but there were areas that required a bunch of thinking. And if a piece of work was going to be larger than a couple of days, larger than a piece of work that could be stuck inside someone's brain immediately, we used the pair programming there to try and make sure that we didn't go down any wrong turnings with that.
So both of the processes you described in terms of the review process and the testing process, where broken tests would break build, or review that you consider to be bad would effectively be a broken build, were after commit. Did you consider review before commit at all, and pre-submit checks for first time?
Cool, so the question there is, everything I talked about there seems to be post-commit. Did you do anything pre-commit? So unfortunately, we couldn't have that built into the actual commit process itself. Various people on the team were using very different systems to be able to plug into things. We couldn't get anything working across there. However, part of the dev check, given that we had that happening after every single task there, was to ask the questions about those specific things and see the code standards running on the person's individual box and seeing the tests running. So whilst they weren't directly plugged into the commit structure, they're part of the process that was followed as part of the dev check.
How big was the team?
How big was the team? The team in London was 4 front-end developers, a back-end developer, and an architect. That was the team that was primarily doing this as a team. We also had a bunch of developers over in Cardiff that was around about the same size, and we also did the dev check process over IRC on occasion there. That took a lot more time than doing it in person, but for some of the things that they were doing, it was useful to do it. So whilst it wasn't the most pleasant thing to do it over the wire, it did work for us. And there was a guy with glasses who keeps on putting his hand up who I've not been able to talk to yet. Yes?
Yeah, can you give me examples of some of the functional testing that you did?
So that was primarily looked after by the testers, so I didn't really have a direct hand in that. But the tests that we were doing were things like making sure that if the user clicked on an area of the page that changed the user's cookie, you changed a whole bunch of data on the page, that occurred, that if the user clicked off the page and came back to it, that the interactions that had happened on the JavaScript layer in the page still applied to the page when you came back to it, those sort of things. Basically, for any tasks that we had that had functional changes to them, we would write functional tests in the browser using Selenium that made sense for that task. Dan?
How did you sell to those on hire that working till stupid o'clock at night was a bad idea?
Thankfully, that wasn't a hard sell at all. That wasn't really the culture within the team anyway. But it is something that I do believe strongly in. And unfortunately, I've not had to really try that hard to make people see that way. Sorry. Go on, PJ.
Is there anything you did that didn't work?
The question was, is there anything that I've done that didn't work? Yeah, I'll come back to that. There probably is something that I'll come to in a minute, but yeah. Crystal?
So I've been involved in quite a lot of code reviews. When you move into a new team, you can find that some people are quite precious about their code, and especially if they've worked on a big story. How can you try and convince them that actually some bits of the code need a refactor, so that might incur a lot more time? And how can you make people less precious about their code?
So the question is, some of us are quite precious. We don't like it when people come and look at our stuff and say that's shit, essentially. How do you help them be less precious? Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? Some people do get quite precious about their stuff. What we found was that at the beginning of the process, when we hadn't done the dev check before, yeah, there was more preciousness there. It was one of those things that with a bit of nicety, with a bit of being able to talk like a human to people and just have a chat about what people were thinking and why they did what they did, we helped to be able to tease that out. And over the sort of first 2 or 3 weeks of us doing the process, things pretty much fell into place for us there.
Yeah.
Hello, sorry.
I gather you're not working there anymore, though. Isn't continuity a part of team building?
So the question was, why aren't you there anymore? Why'd you leave? But yeah, continuity is absolutely important, and frankly, if the team wasn't moving up to Salford, I would still be working on that team there. It was a team that I very much enjoyed working on. And yes, absolutely, continuity is really important. We did know, however, though, that continuity wasn't going to occur, that the team was going to be moved up to Salford. We tried very hard throughout the entire development process to make sure that whilst there was going to be a break in continuity, that there was going to be enough information that the code base was going to be of a quality so that the team that was going to end up taking it wasn't going to be left completely in the lurch. But yeah, continuity is really important. We strove to do that. It's one of the things actually that when I left and I had to do handover, the whole dev check process of doing this after every single task, I actually didn't have a huge amount of handover to do to the team that was still in London, because there'd been enough knowledge share happening there already that there wasn't really a huge amount that was stored inside my brain that various other people in the team didn't already have. And frankly, that made me really happy. And it made the handover process a hell of a lot easier as well, which was nice. Anyone else?
What was the most challenging part of the process for you personally?
For me personally, oh sorry, it helps if I actually keep that up there. What was the most challenging part of the process? Going from the terribleness that we had on the original code base through into the new version, actually working on that code base was the hardest thing of all. For the team in general, nobody liked that at all. When we came over to start working on the new version, there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth about wanting to get away from that. And it was really nice actually that the entire team wanted to do things better. So whilst ultimately we had a very good thing coming out of that, for the sort of 6 months that I was on the team before that, working on that code base, it wasn't that pleasurable at all. But with the force of the team, and this did come from the team, this wasn't something that came from the higher ups at all, because frankly, as long as the work's getting out, there it goes. The team said that they wanted to do things better. The team made the choice that they were going to do that. And if within your team, at your work, you see things that aren't great, just change them. It doesn't necessarily need to have buy-in from higher ups. If you go and change things and they work out better, the higher ups will be happy. Anyone else? Oh, damn it. I want to stop answering questions now. Go on.
How do you determine when something's just a stupid bug or something's very small and something that needs either a dev review, or whatever you call it, or a regression test?
So the question was, how do you tell the difference between something small that doesn't need anything to be looked at, and how do you tell the bigger things? For us, every single story that we worked on had a dev check. Every single one. Didn't matter what it was, everything. Because it shared the knowledge and it found problems with lots of things. For the regression tests, if anything came back as a bug, if it hadn't been picked up by the stuff that we'd done before, it got a regression test. We didn't start off like that, but we learned fairly quickly that it helped us to do that. So anything that was a bug got a regression test.
Hi, I might have missed it, but did you say you had a specific day when you did the review, or?
No. The dev check, so the question was, did you have a specific day when you did the reviews? Not at all. When a task was completed, somebody else in the team was grabbed and went over it.
So was it just then one or two people, not necessarily?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So it's an individual thing there. We still had larger code reviews that went over a big shape of code.
For a while, mate.
Thank you. We still had that there, but on a day-to-day basis, when individual tasks were completed, we got somebody else in the team to come and look at what we'd done. No.
Are
you going to tell me I'm wrong?
No. You are, but it all sounds lovely.
I remember to put my phone number on CVs now.
It all sounds lovely and wonderful. And how many other people at the BBC have you infected?
A few people who have moved on to other teams are doing some of this now.
Right. But essentially, a lot of that was the force of your own personality.
Yes.
That wasn't a bad thing.
Okay. But no, it's something that all this stuff is stuff that I very much believe in, and yes, I did kind of push this myself because I believe in this. Hello.
Just on the review, I've worked in teams where we've had the daily review, but what I found is, well, kind of running agile. So within a sprint, the reviews would add up, although they kind of get a backlog of it because people focus on what they're doing, their own stories, and so other people. How did you get people to push the reviews, and how did you prioritize working versus review?
So the question there was, it's quite difficult to get people to come away from the work that they're already doing. How do you go and pull them out of that to go and do the reviews for everything? The way we did it was that during our day-to-day working life, we were all on IRC as a channel. As a team, we were all on IRC. So when someone was ready to be able to have a dev check done, they would tend to pop onto IRC, say, "Hi, is anyone free for a dev check at the moment?" And whoever happened to be free at that time came and did one for them. That worked most of the time. Most of the time there'd be somebody available who was happy to go and do a dev check at that time. Sometimes, yeah, everyone's busy and it's not possible to do that then. At that point, they either, and this was the exception rather than the norm, they'd either move on to another task and keep shouting for someone else to come and deal with it once they'd finished their own work, or they'd, what was I going to say? Yeah, that's pretty much what they did. Well, yeah. Okay, apparently I'm allowed one more question. Who has the best question? I'm going to go with the chap at the back because you've not had a question answered yet.
How did you do accessibility testing?
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
How did you do accessibility testing?
We asked Ian. No, but seriously, during the process, the developers who were working on the project were developers who cared about accessibility in the first place. Yeah. Yeah, so during the process, we kept in touch with various other people in the BBC who are stakeholders in accessibility at the BBC. We conversed with them about what we were doing, and they raised bugs against us when we were shit. And yeah, that's pretty much the process that we had there for that. And I think that's it. So I'm going to sit down now. Thank you very much, everybody.